On the broadcast tonight, chilling inter-Korean ties. Inter-Korean relations appear to be taking a turn for the worse after North Korea abruptly called off reunions of families separated by the Korean War set for this week. Why and why now? We'll speak to an expert. Tense standoff in Kenya mall siege. Kenyan police strike to end a two-day terrorist attack after the death toll rises to at least 68, with some believed to be still trapped inside the complex. We'll have the latest. And we can all be delighted, says German Chancellor Angela Merkel after scoring a big election win. But her conservative bloc finishes just short of an absolute majority in parliament. This is Early Edition at 6. It is 11 a.m. in Berlin, noon in Nairobi, and 6 on a Monday evening here in Seoul. Welcome to Early Edition at 6. I'm Moon Gonyo.
And I'm Daniel Chen. Thank you for joining us. We begin with the impact of North Korea's abrupt change of heart.
Where tension is brewing on the Korean peninsula after the North pulled the plug on the first inter-Korean family reunions in 3 years, initially set for this coming Wednesday.
Seoul has urged the North to reinstate the plan, but says it is not considering any specific action, at least for the rest of this week. Our Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sung-hee starts us off.
After being slammed by North Korea's abrupt postponement of a round of planned family reunions, Seoul's Unification Ministry said Monday that there is no justification for the action.
As the North caused great disappointment and grief to the divided family members, it will be hard for it to avoid criticism from South Korea and the international community. North Korea must promptly reinstate the plan to heal the wounds of these family members.
The two Koreas were set to hold their first round of reunions in 3 years this week for families separated during the Korean War in the 1950s. For the participants, the hope of seeing their loved ones for the first time in 6 decades fizzled on Saturday, when Pyongyang postponed the meeting indefinitely, blaming Seoul for a reckless and vicious confrontation racket against its northern neighbor. The North also pulled out of talks on resuming South Korean tours to its Mount Kumgang resort, another key inter-Korean cooperation project, which were expected to take place on October 2nd. Seoul emphasized that the family reunions and Mount Kumgang talks will be dealt with as separate issues, but said the time is not right to discuss such matters.
Considering the sentiment of the South Korean public, it's not appropriate to discuss the resumption of the tours for now. That's why we have no specific plans for such talks.
The tours were suspended in 2008 after a South Korean tourist was shot dead by a North Korean soldier. South Korean officials say restoring the family reunion plan is the most urgent matter at the moment, as time is running out for the aging divided family members. Just this past week, one of the South Koreans selected for the reunion program passed away, while 3 others pulled out because of their health. But while Seoul said it is watching the situation closely, it added that it holds no specific plans to make a move this week. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
And it goes without saying that the South Koreans who are expecting to see their relatives for the first time in more than 6 decades are disappointed beyond description.
Many family members like 85-year-old Hong Shin-ja from Seoul had been excited and anxious to see their loved ones on the other side of the border within their lifetime. Hong was hoping to meet with her now 82-year-old sister and had prepared gifts for her before her hopes were so cruelly crushed.
It's been more than 60 years since I've seen my younger sister. We are both old now, so if we don't get to see each other in the coming days, I feel like we'll never see each other again.
Hong first registered with the Red Cross to meet her sister in the early 1980s, but was not selected for the reunions until this year. More than 72,000 South Koreans are on the Red Cross list, waiting to meet their long-lost relatives again one day. Now, despite the sudden postponement of the family reunion program, we're getting confirmation that factories at the Kaesong Industrial Complex were running as usual, a possible sign that the current tensions will not affect operations at the joint business park. Now, Seoul's Unification Ministry said Monday that 445 South Korean workers will cross the border to the factory zone throughout the day today.
That's right. The ministry added that the two Koreas will meet on Tuesday to discuss opening a secretariat for their joint committee on the management of the complex. The business park was reopened last week after a 5-month suspension, and 60% of the factories there are already up and running. The North had unilaterally shut down the complex earlier this year amid heightened inter-Korean tensions.
So in a sudden turn of events, North Korea on Saturday indefinitely postponed reunions that were set to start this Wednesday for families separated during the Korean War, which was more than 60 years ago.
A statement carried by North Korea's state news agency blamed South Korea and said that reunions would not be rescheduled until what they say normal atmosphere was restored for dialogue and negotiations.
So what is Pyongyang thinking, and why has it pulled the plug on a key project of inter-Korean cooperation, especially now with Chile cross-border relations warming up in recent weeks?
Why indeed. Joining us live to provide us some perspective is Dr. Bong Young-sik, Senior Research Fellow at the Asan Institute for Policy Studies. Dr. Bong, thank you for joining us on the program.
Good to be here.
All right, so the North announcement actually came less than a week before the separated families from the two Koreas were set to meet. What is the North trying to achieve through what the South Korean government has called inhumane action, especially when inter-Korean relations seem to be on the upswing?
According to the message from Pyongyang, that North Korean government blamed Park Geun-hye government of South for many things, including the arrest of Mr. Lee Seok-gi and others allegedly championing reconciliation and peace between the two Koreas, and Park Geun-hye government's hostile policy aimed at regime change inside North Korea. But stripped of all disguise, North Korea's message speaks only one thing, meaning Pyongyang wants money. The desired course of action that Pyongyang wants to achieve in negotiation with the Park Geun-hye government was lumped together a lot of reconciliation and economic cooperation projects, including the resumption of Kaesong Industrial Complex and the resumption of tour programs in Mountain Kumgang area. But there are a lot of legal and political obstacles for South Korean government to facilitate the resumption process, especially with regard to the tour program in Mountain Kumgang. And North Korea's frustration must have been the background conditions for such abrupt change of heart.
Okay, one thing that North Korea does very well is pointing fingers, and apparently they're saying the South Korean leaders threw obstacles that hindered ways of reconciliation. So it's going to be difficult, but could you interpret this accusation for us?
It has been less than 2 years since Kim Jong-un emerged as the absolute new leader of North Korea. So it is rather premature for any North Korea observers to delineate the pattern of leadership behavior under Kim Jong-un at this point. But the recent event suggests that it seems like the Kim Jong-un regime does not have any new strategic vision in dealing with inter-Korean relations and national security objectives, blaming the South for everything or outside powers, and swearing that North Korea has inherent right to protect its supreme authority and sovereignty are very familiar tactics of North Korea. That means that desperate North Korea have this tendency to going back to the old pattern of behavior without being able to objectively and accurately calculate its long-term consequences on North Korea's foreign relations.
Right, so they have to make some upgrades, but they're still sticking with the version Kim Jong-il at the moment.
Right, it's a Kim Jong-il version 2.0, unfortunately.
Now, as you just mentioned earlier, the Mount Kumgang project, the North pulled the plug on the family reunions on Saturday and also said it was pulling out of talks, working level talks, on resuming South Korean tours to the North Mount Kumgang resort. Now, that's one project that Pyongyang was actually very keen on resuming. Why is that?
In human psychology, when somebody denies something in excessive manner, that means that he or she has latent desire, very strong desire to have it. If North Korea's only purpose is humanitarian aims, the reunion of separate families, or to issue a strong protest to hardline policy of Park Geun-hye government, then canceling the reunion project must have been sufficient to convey the message to Seoul. But canceling both projects, meaning that North Korea has very strong internal desire to combine the two as a way of increasing its leverage upon Park Geun-hye government to agree on the resumption of Mountain Kumgang tour programs in the terms that heavily favors Pyongyang.
Right, they're always trying to put the three together as a package, Mount Kumgang, Kaesong, and of course family reunion. So how do we go about, for South Korea's part, establishing what North Korea would refer to as a normal mode, where they can actually work out the differences and really get things going and keep the ball moving?
Sometimes it is a best strategy for you to keep everything simple, or if you go back to Calvin Klein's wisdom, then less is more. Meaning that Park Geun-hye government has maintained that it is committed to separating politics and economics and humanitarian agenda from political agenda. So continued operation of Kaesong Industrial Complex would be a very good first step for both Korean governments to test the other side's intention and commitment to improving inter-Korean relations. And I don't think Pyongyang is ready to pull the plug of the Kaesong Industrial Complex because it has invested so much political capital and pride for the resumption of Kaesong Industrial Complex. And it is only reliable cash cow for Pyongyang. And it would send a wrong signal to South Korea and other related parties on Korean affairs, including China, the big sponsor of Pyongyang, that North Korea should be blamed for downward spiral of the international political conditions on the Korean Peninsula. So I don't think Pyongyang will do anything to harm the operation of the Kaesong Industrial Complex.
All right, so in your view, will the latest chill in inter-Korean relations deal a step back to possibly the six-party denuclearization talks? And what's your forecast on inter-Korean relations from now and on?
China has been trying so hard, almost like it has been pulling teeth to persuade Washington and Seoul to agree upon unconditional resumption of six-party talks. But Washington and Seoul demonstrate a remarkably strong coordinated stance that unless North Korea clearly demonstrates its commitment to the cause of denuclearization, then resuming the six-party talk will be meaningless. So the ball is in the court of North Korea about the resumption of six-party talks. So there will be very painful, prolonged, and difficult reassessment of its strategic objectives inside the Kim Jong-un government, at least for a while, to cover a wide range of the political objectives, including the Mountain Kumgang tour program and North Korea joining six-party talks. We have to wait and see.
Okay, one thing that's clearly predictable about North Korea is its unpredictability. Thank you for trying to help us understand the enigmatic North Korea here, Dr. Pung Young-sik.
Thanks for your invitation.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with heroes and experts to help you understand the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best with Moon Gun Young and Daniel Che on Early Edition at 6.
Now shifting gears to the economy, Korean import prices rose by 2 points. On to the latest on the Kenyan shopping center shooting. Local authorities seem to be close to ending the two-day siege that has left at least 68 dead. Kenyan security forces have launched what they call a final assault to bring out remaining hostages. Most of those captured have already been rescued. Our Han Da-eun has the latest.
Heavy gunfire and sporadic explosions were heard at the shopping center in Nairobi, Kenya early Monday morning as Kenyan security forces launched a final assault into the building from the air and ground. It's believed that more than 10 people are still being held hostage by some 10 to 15 gunmen, reportedly members of the Somali jihadist group Al-Shabaab. Officials say all last-ditch efforts are underway to bring the matter to a speedy conclusion. The Kenyan military said earlier that they had rescued most of the hostages who have been holed up inside the mall since Saturday afternoon and have taken control of most parts of the building. 4 soldiers were reported to have been injured during the operation and taken to the hospital. Gunmen opened fire at the Westgate shopping mall on Saturday around noon local time, killing at least 68 people and injuring over 170. Eyewitnesses said the gunmen threw grenades and fired indiscriminately at shoppers.
We tried escaping and they threw a grenade. The sharp particles entered me into my hand and my leg. There were very many people who were injured.
A 38-year-old Korean woman, Kang Moon-hee, is among the dead. Seoul's foreign ministry says Kang recently moved to Kenya with her British husband, who's currently recovering at a nearby hospital. Meanwhile, the international community has strongly denounced the attack. The U.S. State Department has called it a senseless act of violence, while the United Nations, France, and Britain all offered to provide necessary assistance. Han Da-eun, Arirang News.
Over in Pakistan, a suicide bombing outside a church in the northwestern city of Peshawar has killed at least 70 people and left more than 120 wounded in what's been called one of the deadliest attacks against the country's Christian minority. The attack occurred Sunday as worshippers were coming out of All Saints Church when 2 explosions erupted in the middle of the crowd. A group linked to the Pakistani Taliban Jandollah has claimed responsibility for the bombing, which they said was carried out in retaliation for U.S. drone strikes in the northwestern part of that country. The group has reportedly said it would continue to target non-Muslims until the U.S. put an end to the strikes in Pakistan. The latest strike occurred on Sunday when missiles were fired into a militant compound in the North Waziristan tribal area, killing 6 suspected militants. Over in Germany, German Chancellor Angela Merkel's enduring popularity has spurred her to a 3rd term in office. Despite Sunday's resounding victory, her Christian Democrats fell slightly short of securing an absolute majority, meaning Merkel will now have to cozy up to another party as her current coalition partners have been all but wiped off the political map. Arirang News' Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Angela Merkel has won a 3rd term as German Chancellor after her Christian Democrat Party polled strongly in Sunday's general elections. Merkel urged her party to celebrate what she called a super result, as official polls show her Christian Democrats and its Bavarian sister party won 41.5% of the vote. But Merkel may be forced to seek a grand coalition with the center-left Social Democrats since her Free Democrat partner secured less than the 5% of the votes needed to enter parliament. The Social Democrats won 25.7% of the votes and the Greens over 8%. The ball is in Merkel's court.
We will do all we can in the next 4 years together to make them successful years for Germany. We will now wait for the election results. It is too early to say how we will proceed.
If Merkel is to rule alone without a coalition, she would have a tough battle against an upper house dominated by left-leaning parties, like the Social Democrats and the Greens. This would make Merkel more vulnerable to Eurosceptics, who want to spoil her austerity-focused approach to struggling Eurozone members. Merkel is set to be the longest-serving female head of government if she fulfills her 3rd term, surpassing Margaret Thatcher, who was British Prime Minister for 11 years. Merkel, who grew up in East Germany, became the first female German chancellor in 2005. Kim Ji-young, Arirang News.
Lawmakers are back at work at the National Assembly. They spent Monday drawing up action plans for the coming weeks based on feedback they received from their constituents over last week's Chuseok holiday. Our Kim Hyun-ji reports.
The main opposition Democratic Party rolled out a new action plan on Monday that includes running a 24-hour headquarters within Parliament to focus exclusively on parliamentary business. For the past 2 months, the opposition party has carried out an outdoor campaign in Seoul in protest against allegations that the spy agency meddled in last year's presidential election. The street protest has divided the Democratic Party's attention and resources, but the party now says it will launch a separate all-out campaign against the Park Geun-hye administration at the National Assembly. At a meeting of its lawmakers Monday, Democratic Party leader Kim Han-gil asked the 126 lawmakers to bring sleeping bags to the National Assembly and immerse themselves in legislative activities, while Kim himself said he would expand the outdoor protests nationwide. The government's attempts to scale back President Park's basic pension plan will be at the top of their agenda, among others. During her campaign, President Park pledged to give everyone who's at least 65 years old about $186 a month. But reports say the welfare ministry will narrow the eligibility to people in the lower 70% income bracket and vary the amount according to income level. Meanwhile, the ruling Saenuri Party convened a meeting of its lawmakers Monday afternoon and said it welcomes the opposition party's decision to resume parliamentary business. Saying that a slowing domestic economy is the public's biggest concern, the ruling party leadership urged its lawmakers to focus on creating jobs and reviving the sluggish real estate market. In response to the Democratic Party's installation of a 24-hour headquarters within the parliament, the ruling Saenuri Party plans to set up a situation room to keep an eye on the opposition party. Meanwhile, the rival parties will begin negotiating a date for the standing committees to resume work and will get ready for the upcoming audit of government offices. Kim Hyun-ji, Arirang News.
And some welcome news for those of you putting in a day's work here in Korea. There will be 67 holidays on next year's calendar, the most the nation has seen in 12 years. The Ministry of Public Administration and Security says this is in part thanks to the new substitution holiday law that takes effect from next year. The new law grants 1 weekday off when a major public holiday falls on a Sunday. The demand for hybrid vehicles in Korea is spiking, and foreign car makers are starting to make inroads into the local market. The Korea Institute for Industrial Economics and Trade said Monday that foreign car makers accounted for 20% of all hybrid cars sold in the country in the first half of this year. Toyota said 24% of the cars it sold in Korea were hybrids, while Lexus said almost half of its sales were of hybrid vehicles. The state-run institute says demand for green cars will likely increase in the near future and added that local car manufacturers should prepare themselves for the change.
At least 25 people have been killed in southern China as Typhoon Usagi, which was dubbed as the strongest storm on Earth, slammed into the Chinese mainland. Now, China's state-run Xinhua news agency says the deaths were reported on China's southern coast, including 13 in Guangdong province.
Gale force winds of over 180 kilometers an hour and heavy downpours forced thousands to evacuate their homes, while authorities deployed 50,000 disaster relief workers to the hardest hit areas. Authorities have now lifted typhoon warnings across the region as the typhoon weakened to a tropical storm.
Usagi, which means rabbit in Japanese, killed 2 people in the Philippines and caused chaos across Hong Kong, throwing flight schedules into disarray and flooding many areas. And so as our Asian neighbor struggles from a horrific storm, we here in Korea are thankfully experiencing late summer, early autumn-like conditions.
Right, that's for sure. And for more, let's go over to our Michelle Park standing by at the Weather Center. Michelle, it was a bit hot outside today with a hint of a nice autumn breeze, though.
Yes, Daniel, it was very nice, and as you can see, today is the autumnal equinox.
Right, which means our day and night are about the same length today, right?
That's right. Today is the day when the sun crosses the equator from the northern and to the southern hemisphere, which means the sun rises exactly in the east and sets exactly in the west. So we should feel more of the fall season in the days to come. And tomorrow we have cooler daytime temperatures as well. And also there's going to be nationwide rain tomorrow at different times depending on the regions. Taking a closer look at the forecast, Seoul will start off the morning at 21 and reach 23 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will peak at 29 and 30 degrees respectively. And down onto Jeju Island, you'll see mostly cloudy skies, fortunately with no rain as well. Dokdo and Mangkumgang should be cool at 25 and 16 degrees. Well, that's all I have for you tonight. I'm Michelle Park, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you for that, Michelle. And that's all from us for this hour. Thank you for watching. This has been Daniel Chen.
And I'm Moon Gon-young. Thank you as always for being here with us. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see you right back here same time tomorrow. Good night.